Hello, I'm Susan Michie. I'm Professor of Health Psychology and Director of the Centre for Behaviour Change at UCL and based in Torrington Place. The main research area I'm involved with is how to develop more effective interventions to change behaviour, and that means understanding behaviour theoretically and also developing methods to systematically design behaviour change interventions, both in terms of thinking about how they can have maximum impact with target audiences and also how they can be evaluated so we can learn from them in terms of building our evidence and therefore being in a position to develop more effective interventions. And I work with policymakers and practitioners and all those who use the interventions at the coalface, because that's absolutely essential to developing interventions that are going to be usable and useful in their real context and people's everyday lives. Well, I would argue that behaviour is essential in solving pretty well every problem that the human species faces. So in terms of health, it's how do you prevent ill health? How do you help people manage disability, long-term conditions? And also, how do you get evidence-based practice actually implemented in the health service? So the behaviour of health professionals and others, managers, commissioners, etc. in the health service. If you go beyond that, obviously the whole issue of environmental sustainability, human behaviour is absolutely key in terms of how we lead our lives, from recycling to using fuel for transport, etc. And then there's issues of conflict, of cohesion, and pretty well you name the topic and I'll tell you how behaviour is absolutely essential to actually changing things for the better. 4 years ago, I was lucky enough to be awarded a strategic grant from the Provost to set up the Centre for Behaviour Change. And the reason I set the centre up is it is very obvious that the problems of understanding and changing behaviour are not going to be solved by any one discipline on their own. A huge need to bring disciplines together, engineering, architecture, ethics, IT, psychology, but a whole range of different types of disciplines. And also I'm very passionate about translating academic expertise to those who would find it useful and actually be able to use that expertise, that knowledge, to make a difference in society. And we started with 2 postdocs for 3 years, but have built it up. We have now 6 members of staff and a really fantastic programme of public events, of research activities, teaching, training, consultancy. So it's a huge amount of fun to run it because there's so many different types of people and activities we're bringing together, but also I do feel it's making a difference. Our events are sold out. We have more than 4,000 on our mailing list, so it's a very satisfying thing to do, and we always try and ensure that we are communicating research evidence, but in ways that people can understand it and take it away and use it. Well, I've supervised many PhD students and contributed to undergraduate and postgraduate programmes, but the most exciting thing is that this year we've set up a new MSc in behaviour change, again multidisciplinary, and we were hoping to limit it to 24 people, but 35 people turned up, more than half from overseas. And a wonderful range of backgrounds, some people high flyers academically, others who've had incredibly interesting jobs. So it's a really good group of people, and so far so good. They seem to be really enjoying it. But that's, I think, we can do a lot with in terms of developing, because there's a huge interest and need, and there's no other course like it in the world as far as we can see. really follow one's curiosity and one's passions, and not to feel that one has to be directed into where the money is or what's fashionable at any one moment. But if there are questions that you really want answered, I would definitely go for those. Having said that, the world is a demanding place within universities as well as everywhere else. And so I think one does have to balance following one's curiosities and one's passions with having an eye on what is going to be socially useful and what is likely to be funded. The other bit of advice I'd say is work with other people and work with other disciplines. Collaborations are really productive, and one learns so much from working with people from other disciplines who bring other perspectives to the same problem. And another piece of advice I would say is do look for mentors, people who are more senior, who are prepared to give you a bit of time to give advice, to listen to you, to support you. I've certainly never had a formal mentorship, but I've had mentors, more senior people in my field that I find invaluable. Another piece of advice I'd say is don't just get buried in academia. Sometimes people think, well, I can't afford to give the time to serve on committees, for example, NICE or things beyond academia, or get involved in policy. I would say you can't afford not to. Not only a question of the translational aspect, but also a lot of my best work has come from being stimulated by having to address real world problems where the answers I bring have the possibility of making a big difference. It's not just a question of getting another publication. So I think that engaging with the world out there really is stimulating intellectually and academically. I think one of its strongest aspects, or an aspect where I think it really does well compared to other universities, is the real commitment to multidisciplinarity. I think about 6-7 years ago, the Grand Challenges were launched in many different areas, so global health, human well-being, cultural interactions, now technology. It's expanded into other areas. And these are programs of research and thinking that are designed to really confront big societal problems. And funding and support is provided at an institutional level for different disciplines to come together and do pieces of research together or projects of various kinds. And certainly that has brought me into contact with a huge range of very interesting people. And as an undergraduate, I think that trickles down, and there's a breadth of perspective that's provided in the teaching at UCL at all levels. I love dancing. Maybe that's not surprising. I do like tweeting. I am quite an avid Twitterer. And I'd say that of my 5,000 followers now, I'd say 2/3 of them are probably work, but 2/3 of the tweets that I put out are probably about politics and current events.